Welcome to the channel. My name is Jodie Knight. You can find me over on eToro. My live portfolio there is going to be linked in the description down below. But other than that, in this video, we're going to talk about the daily chart, the weekly chart, the short and long-term, long-dated options interest. We'll talk a little bit about my price targets, where I'm going to add, where I'm going to trim. As well as that, we'll look at the general market, what data came out, what data is coming out, and if there's any good Tesla news that we're interested in. Let's just jump straight into it. So Tesla as well. So I did promise I would do 2 videos today. So I'm working super hard, even though I feel really rough still. So hope you guys appreciate it. There was a little bit of Tesla news to talk about. Obviously, we've got to talk about the Delaware judge again. Ugh. And then we also need to talk a little bit about FSD, but we'll talk about that in the news section. But for now, price is holding really well in this super tight range. I'm actually really impressed by the strength of it. I get the sense that we're preparing for another move upwards on this one. Now, we are at my fair value for 2024, which was $350, and I don't really like adding to positions when they get to there. I like to shrink them down to a more manageable 10% weighting, which is kind of where I'm at with Tesla right now. However, I've been jiggling my models for the coming few years. So I think my fair value for 2025 will be between the range of $500 to $700 by the end of year next year. Now, it's really hard to be more specific than that. There's so much changing for Tesla. We've got the EV credits that are going to go away. We've also got a lot of new products ramping up. We've got the semi FSD is just looking phenomenal right now as well. We've got the affordable car and just so much stuff. It's hard to build out an accurate model when you don't know enough of the data in the background. But currently, those are the numbers I'm kind of looking at. For now, I'm holding this waiting. I'm happy for more upside, and I will buy on any substantial dips. But until I know a bit more concrete information about the next year, I'm pretty happy with where I'm sitting because a lot of people do think this is still expensive. Levels to watch out for, though, I think it's entirely possible we do get to 400 by year end. That's the next kind of historical resistance, but also above that, then we've got the kind of 418 to 20 level, and that would be very poetic for it to get to that. So I would be very happy if it did get to that. I probably would trim out a little bit there, though. To the downside, I would add if we got this little gap down here at 323, but I wouldn't want to add a substantial amount unless we got down to kind of 290, definitely sub there. And if we did fill this gap to the downside, which we know Tesla does love filling its gaps, and it's got a lot of gaps open below, I would really probably push up to a 15% weighting, but I don't see this price happening unless something really bad happens, but can't see it. I think sales and all sorts is going to look really good for the next quarter for Tesla. People trying to get their orders in before the credits go away. So I think that all looks good. RSI, it's a little bit warm. It does have a little bit of a bearish divergence, but I think it's kind of played out. Let me just put it on here. So, I mean, we could have a pullback based on that, but if we do push up a little bit higher, then that's going to invalidate that anyway. And the MACDX Plus, I did get a couple of overbought alerts on there. Price hasn't really pulled back substantially enough for us to say that they were not something we had to worry about. So price is looking a bit extended. Maybe we do chop around a little bit more, work some of that the technicals out. We are building out a very nice volume shelf here. If we could make that a bit larger, that would be. Sorry, I need to hiccup. And flow looks pretty good. It's getting a little bit tired, but it can stay there for a while. We've seen that before with Tesla. If we just look at the weekly, looks good. Can't really hate it. I think if we zoom out a bit more, I did put some levels on here. Maybe not. Maybe I imagined it, but yeah, overall, the longer something stays in a range, the better. It's quite a large range, but it is a range. Need to move that. Sorry. The RSI is a little bit hot, but Tesla can go much higher on here if it did want to pop off. But like we've talked about earlier when we looked at the daily numbers, if we did push up to this 420, would be right at previous all-time high. So I would expect at least a pullback down to the 340 area on that one, or something along that. you're not gonna smash through that straight away. Especially after the move that we've had up to it. So just bear that in mind. I wouldn't enter a position there. And MACDX Plus looks good. Big boys are still loading up the boat on that one. And flow also looks good. So options on this one, we've got the resistance sitting at 360 there. That's going to be a really tough area to break in the short term. Market makers are going to want to sell on that one. And to the downside, there no huge levels really sticking out to me. 340, I guess, is probably one of the bigger ones, but definitely a lot more bullish interest in this one. Let's push it out a week. Again, most of the strikes at 360, and we do make a push up to 400, which is nice. That kind of aligns with what we're seeing on the chart as well. To the downside, not a whole lot really sticking out, is there? So not too much going to be holding it up if we do have a substantial fall. Maybe 300 is a pretty good level to bounce on. Pushing it out another week. 300 gets better as a support area, and 400 more prominent as resistance. So kind of looks like the market is thinking maybe we do make a push up to 400 towards the end of the year. We can double check January as well, even though that's only 2 weeks after that date we've just looked at. A lot of support here now though for 335, 330, 325. So market makers are going to want to buy when it gets to those levels quite aggressively, by the looks of it, and still 360. So I mean, we'll be ranging in that kind of area unless we pop out. If we do pop out above that, we're likely going to 400. So that lines up with what we were looking at in the other charts. Let's go out to 2026, shall we, and have a little look. Get rid of the trends and the sport. Makes it a bit easier. Oh, it's gone laggy again. Sometimes this website's really annoying. It's great most of the time, but every now and again it gets really hard to make it smaller. So we talked about potential fair values for the end of 2025 being between 500 and 700. And if the chart works, we can see that a lot of people are also in agreement that 500's where they're kind of sat on this one. I don't know if it's going to let me pull it down anymore because the chart's gone a bit crappy. Not many people currently are sitting at 700. But I think we start off at 500. And then as the new products and stuff news comes out, details on pricing, and we start to scale up and all that good stuff, that's when we see the price move up towards the end of the year. So I think first quarter is going to be more in the 500 kind of area, and then we're going to scale up that. I think actually we could end up being a bit modest with our price predictions on that one, but we'll see. So Tesla news. We've got the elephant in the room to talk about, but I did want to point out that it's also really essential to note that Kramer just put out that Tesla should do well in December, so brace yourself for a big drop. We always love to have a good bit of contrarian humor when Kramer comes out supporting something. I think the inverse Kramer ETF actually got shut down. I don't know. I never invested in it, so I never would suggest that would be a smart investment plan, but it's good fun. But the shareholder vote for Elon's pay package, the Delaware judge has said no again. Not really a shock. It's just a bit of an inconvenience, I think. That's not the end of things. It then goes to the Delaware Supreme Court, which I think they will actually overturn it. But if they don't, it then goes to the US Supreme Court, and they will 1000% overturn it. And by the time it gets there, Trump will be in, and it should be okay. But I mean, the statements from the judge are just crazy. If I can, so her name's Kathleen McCormick, I believe. Despite Tesla shareholders approving the pay package in June, the initial decision to nullify the compensation stands. McCormick emphasized that conflicts of interest and lack of transparency during the approval process rendered the shareholder reapproval insufficient to address these issues. really. They were pretty clear with everything, and they've been clear since they initially proposed this to shareholders. So I don't know what she's talking about. Um, and I think if you don't really know much about the deal, so back in 2018, Tesla was on the verge of bankruptcy. I think in his book he talks about being days or hours away from having to not pay people their Christmas salary. And this was when SpaceX was in a rough patch as well, and Elon invested a lot of his initial money into the companies. But Elon made this deal to not take compensation unless the company hit certain targets, and these targets at the time seemed crazy. So it was a bit. They seemed very Hail Mary. Now he's kind of done it, and I guess the judge thinks it's wrong that he did too good of a job bringing value to shareholders that he shouldn't earn his pay package, even though this company's made so many millionaires. It's crazy. So yeah, it's not the end of the story. I think the Tesla prices today have been a reflection. It's a little bit of a shock in the after hours yesterday when the news came out, but for the most part, I don't think people care that much because they know that it's going to get overturned eventually. The other part of the story about this to talk about is Delaware is going to see an exodus of companies from incorporating there. So that's a lot of tax revenue they're going to be losing. We have seen other companies start to incorporate elsewhere as well. I think Texas is going to be a pretty big hub of companies going forward into the future. They've shot themselves in the face a little bit. I mean, maybe they could have saved some grace if she just kind of was like, oh, I'm sorry, I made the wrong decision, but no, not good. That's us all done and dusted for another Tesla Tuesday wrap up. If you enjoyed this content, give the video a like, share it with your mum, your nan, your dog, your dad, whoever, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.